Hi, I'm Will Owen, ex-professional rugby player turned S&C coach, and this is going to be my YouTube series, The Rugby Performance Blueprint. Performance is a multifaceted, complicated web of qualities that on Instagram you just don't get the time to delve into in the adequate detail. In this series, we're going to be looking more specifically at how you can build your body to more effectively and more consistently dominate the contact area. There's going to be 8 episodes, and in each episode, we're going to solve one major problem that's going to naturally lead into the next one. So it's easier to digest and easier to implement into your week. Episode 1, why most rugby players never reach their potential even though they train hard. Most rugby players aren't limited by effort, they're limited by strategy. And when performance is made up of speed, strength, size, conditioning, robustness, mindset, nutrition, rest, recovery, you name it, then not having a strategy can be catastrophic. The ultimate goal of strength and conditioning is to improve your on-field performance. Speed, strength, size, conditioning, and so many other contributing factors all count. And it's a fine balancing act. I'm going to use myself as an example. I've played everywhere between 96 kilos and 115 kilos. At 96 kilos, I was fast, but I wasn't winning as many collisions as I like to. At about 99 to 101, I was really in the sweet spot. Quick, winning most of my collisions, and durable. At 115 kilos, I was a joke. Much slower, much less durable. Lasted 80, but not at my best. But I did win most of my collisions. Change of crap vest. Same episode. So what we're going to go through now is probably the 2 most common mistakes I see when rugby players are trying to train for the betterment of their sport. And those 2 things are either carrying too much body fat or too little body fat, and also trying to pack on too much muscle mass. Quick caveat before we get started properly. Bodybuilding absolutely has a place in rugby S&C, but you don't want to take it too far. Before we go into the pros and cons of higher versus lower body fat percentages, have a look at this quick table to see where the pros sit. Now with that in mind, you'll get a rough idea of what sort of ranges are optimum for performance, generally speaking. However, everybody is individual. You see some players carrying much higher body fat percentages than the typical ranges for their positions, yet they can still last 60, 70, 80 minutes at a very good level of performance whilst maintaining their X factor, whether that is putting people on their ass or set piece dominance or big hits. And on the flip side to that, you see lots of players carrying much less body fat than what is typical for their position and still performing really well. Look at Max Lahey, for example. So what you need to be able to do is assess your own situation and be really, really honest with yourself. And it might take a little bit of experimentation along the way, but if you plan on having a long career, it's well worth finding out what your fighting weight is. In a minute, I'm going to show you a decision-making tree that might help you make your own mind up. But before I do that, I'm going to give you some real tangible scores that you want to be striving towards hitting. And if you're way off, the likelihood is you're carrying a little bit too much fat. Firstly, your relative strength. Let's say you can squat 200 kilos. That sounds brilliant. But if your body weight is 130 kilos, in relativity, it's not that strong. So if you can climb your squat up to 220 kilos and drop your body weight down to 120 kilos, that's going to improve your relative strength dramatically. And relative strength is an unbelievable precursor for power and speed potential. Your reactive strength index is less than 1.5. This score basically measures how quickly you can absorb and redirect force by using something like a depth jump. Heavy people with useful mass can still score well in this test, but if you're dropping below 1.5, the quickest way you can improve this score is to drop some body fat. Your basic aerobic fitness is poor. For most rugby players, that'll just be your Bronco score. For people with coaches, it might be your maximal aerobic speed. But have a look at this table for elite level Bronco scores and this table for elite level maximal aerobic speed scores. I've said it before on social media, these tests do not tell you everything, but they're brilliant precursors and they lay the foundation for all of your other energy systems to be really effective upon. So if you can afford to lose a little bit of weight for your position, that's probably going to be the quickest way for you to start improving these scores. And finally, speed. If your split times are staying the same despite getting stronger, you're probably carrying too much body fat. If your split times are stagnating or declining whilst you're adding mass, you're probably adding useless mass. And if after every time you sprint or have a sprint session, your calves, Achilles, knees, ankles, etc. are flaring up and irritating you, then you're probably carrying a little bit too much weight. Believe me when I say it, I've played at 115 kilos as a centre, and playing with mass that isn't useful is not fun. You end up blowing out of your arse for most of the game, and it's also the only time in my 10-year professional career and 4-year semi-professional career that I've ever torn my hamstring whilst I was playing for the Barbarians. But now we'll flip to the other side of the coin. What are the consequences of playing too lean? I was around 26 years old when a coach told me he wanted me to drop about 4 kilos from 100 down to around 96 in order to be more mobile, more dynamic and faster around the pitch. Now, I already considered myself a pretty dynamic centre, half decent footwork, pretty quick, very aggressive and very physical. But coaches make the rules, so I decided to play along. And what transpired was a slow degeneration of my performance. I was training full-time Monday through to Friday, playing on Saturday and coaching on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as well as gym floor coaching as I was starting out as an S&C coach. So I had a lot on my plate, I was really active, and to chuck on top of it, I started a diet. My strength numbers started to decline. My power numbers followed. My confidence followed that. I was putting myself through all of this, and for what? I hadn't got faster, I'd gotten weaker and less explosive. I wasn't covering any more high-speed meters or extra distance on the GPS. All I had to show for it was a set of abs and a bicep vein. So here's where getting lean can become risky. Very low levels of body fat is often accompanied by very low calorie intake, which can lead to lower strength outputs, lower power outputs, lower speed outputs, and quicker fatigue. Off the back of that, reduced collision dominance because you're carrying less weight into contact at the same or less speed. Increased risk of injury, especially from collision-based impacts because you've lost some of the armor and padding that you'd built up top. And of course, poor recovery because you're probably not getting the right nutrients in the right quantities for things like muscle repair, glycogen replenishment, hormone production, and immune function. So my advice to you if you feel like you need to cut a little bit of body fat would be this. Don't go into a deficit of any more than 10% of your total daily energy expenditure. Focus really hard on your macros. 2 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. 4 to 5 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. 40 grams of fiber per day and 1 gram of fat per kilogram of body weight. If the amount of calories within that doesn't allow you to be in a deficit, then do this. Drop fats first, then drop carbohydrates off non-training days. And if you're still struggling, then stop sacrificing nutrients and start moving a little bit more daily. We're going to go into the nutrition side of things a lot more in episodes 2 and 3. But for now, let's get into the next category, building muscle. Why it's important, how to do it effectively, and when enough is enough. Muscle mass and bodybuilding style training within rugby S&C circles has been kind of stigmatized online. And I think a lot of the time it's just because it doesn't look fancy. It doesn't sell very well. The harsh truth is this: to play rugby, to cope with the demands of the sport, you need a respectable level of muscle mass. So in this segment, I'm going to tell you exactly how to build it. And we're back where we started. Muscle growth. The first thing to understand is the mechanisms that cause your body to adapt, cause your body to grow muscle. The primary mechanisms are mechanical tension, metabolic stress, and muscle damage. Now, mechanical tension by far takes the throne here. And ultimately, all it means is lifting heavy loads through full range of motion with good control. And you know you're getting a good level of mechanical tension when the reps start to slow down involuntarily. In a set of 8, that might be the last 4 reps. There's quite a well-researched model called the effective reps model, and it states that you only get 5 effective stimulating reps in any one set. So if you're hitting a 5 rep max, for example, all of those reps are going to be stimulating. Whereas if you're doing a set of 10, then the first 5 might not count towards growth too much, but the last 5 really will. But all the data we have shows that if you're chasing hypertrophy, you can achieve it anywhere between 5 and 30 reps, as long as proximity to failure is the same. Which leads me on to the main model I use for hypertrophy, the double progression model. This model requires a rep range. So for this example, we use the rep range 5 to 8. If we know that we can get 5 stimulating reps, then stopping 2 or 3 reps short of failure is still going to give some stimulus. So rather than shooting straight for the top and maxing out on every single set with no clear progression path in mind, you deliberately stop at the bottom end of the rep range on week 1, safe in the knowledge that at least 2 or 3 reps from each set will be stimulating. Each week, you add 1 rep to as many of the sets as you can. So it might be week 1, 3 lots of 5, week 2, 3 lots of 6, week 3, 3 lots of 7. Then as you get to the top end of the rep range, that might start to slow down. So you might go 8, 7, 6 or 8, 7, 7. But eventually you'll hit 8, 8, 8, at which point you'll increase the weight and you'll start the process again from 5. Now, the reason I like this method is because it's controlled, and time again, it produces predictable results. If you're in desperate need of muscle mass, I would suggest adding 1 set to the end, reducing the load by 5 to 10%, and doing as many reps as possible. By doing it this way, you prolong the time that you can see improvements and see growth for before you hit a plateau or a performance dip, at which point you change the method, the model, or the rep range. The alternative is redlining straight from the word go, but then you plateau and you drop a lot sooner. It's much less sustainable, and the benefit to hypertrophy is negligible. If you use RPE as a way of measuring your intensity, you can expect this to scale from an RPE 8 to 8 to 9 to 9 to 9 to 10, with a couple of weeks maybe where it feels like a 10. Or try to spend the majority of your sets and reps in the 8 to 9 range, with maybe 1 set per exercise per week reserved for RPE 10. In season, however, apart from in testing blocks, I would never hit RPE 10 on any lower body compound lifts. So in summary, mechanical tension, lifting at 80 to 87% of your 1 rep max. Rep range is probably best between 4 and 8. Add volume first, then add load. The next mechanism is metabolic stress. And you know when you're starting to stimulate metabolic stress when you start to feel the pump. And this is very much a complementary mechanism, not a primary mechanism for hypertrophy. It's thought to work by increasing muscle fiber recruitment, especially under fatigue, causing cell swelling, which may signal the cells to grow, and stimulating anabolic signaling used in muscle protein synthesis. But how do we best produce it? Firstly, much higher volume sets. I would go anywhere between 8 and 20. Keep the rest periods shorter, 30 to 90 seconds max. You have to train close to muscular failure, 0 to 3 reps in reserve. And consider intensifiers like drop sets, rest pause sets, and myo reps. As with everything, the goal is to progress. So whether you're adding sets and reps or adding weight, you need to try and keep it moving forward week on week. And the final mechanism, muscle damage. This is definitely the one to be most conservative with, especially as rugby players. And you have to remember that this is a complementary mechanism and it is not required for muscle growth. That said, it can help by triggering the repair and remodeling process after muscle disruption. And there's a few ways you can train it. Number 1, slow eccentrics. Think 4 to 8 seconds of constant tension with quite high volume. New exercises or unfamiliar movements. You're most likely to feel this at the start of a new block. For example, you go from back squatting to Bulgarian split squatting, and the next day your glutes are on fire. Training at long muscle lengths. This one's been popularized recently by people like Mike Israetel. You might have seen him talking about lengthened partials. Ultimately, all that means is finding the really lengthened position of the movement that you're trying to achieve and just doing partial reps in that range. Ultimately, that's trying to achieve exactly this. And finally, very, very high training volumes. Ultimately, anything that you do with loads and loads of volume is going to cause some sort of damage. Now, the reason I say that rugby players need to be careful with this mechanism, we've all heard of DOMS, delayed onset of muscular soreness. But do we all know exactly what that can do to performance? When a muscle is really sore, it doesn't perform as well. You can't find the same range of motion that it would usually have. it won't produce the same amount of strength that it's usually got or the same amount of power. Your speed will drop. You'll move differently, run differently, sprint differently. None of which are good things. So considering that this is only a complementary mechanism for muscle growth, I would steer way clear of it for any lower body training. For things like bicep curls, tricep extensions, flies, lateral raises, rear delt flies, fine. It's more important we protect the performance of our lower body. So, in summary, 70 to 80% of your muscle mass will probably come from traditional hypertrophy and strength work. Straight sets, loads of 80% or more, and full range of motion. Tag in some metabolic stress finishers to the end of all of your upper body sessions or full body sessions, and reserve muscle damage for very, very specific muscle groups. Now, with all of that information, you're more than equipped to build muscle consistently for a long time before needing to think about doing anything else. But how much is too much? There's no magic number that states this is too much muscle, it's gonna start dipping your performance. But the moment it does start to dip your performance is probably when it's too much. If you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and it's lean, but you're getting slower and slower and slower, it's too much. If you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and still getting quicker and quicker and quicker, or maintaining your speed, then it's fine. If you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger and your fitness scores are dropping, it's probably too much. If you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but your endurance is improving and your repeatability is improving, you're getting through more instances in games, you're getting through more meters, high speed meters on the GPS, great. If you're getting bigger and bigger and you're getting fewer upper body impact injuries, then great. But if you're getting bigger and bigger and you're getting more niggles, more impingements, then it's not great. The point I'm making is it's individual to you. I myself put on 5 kilograms of lean mass, and I know it was lean because we were doing skin fold testing regularly, but my speed dropped and my work rate dropped because I hadn't adapted to being able to carry that extra weight efficiently enough. And on the flip side to that, I had a client called Maxi. We worked together for about 12 months and he gained 12 kilos of lean mass. But at the same time, he improved his Bronco score by 58 seconds and his box jump by 6 inches. He got through his first full season without injury in years, and he climbed 3 university teams. So in a nutshell, if it's useful and it doesn't slow down or prevent the other more important athletic qualities, then great, get as big as you can. But if you're doing it to the detriment of your speed, your aerobic conditioning, your repeatability, and your availability, then it's probably not a good idea. So Maxi is proof that you can gain considerable mass over time and still perform better if you're doing everything else correctly. But what you can't do is chase one too hard whilst neglecting the other qualities. That's only ever going to result in decreased levels of performance. You can also drop body fat and still improve your performance, again, if you do it right. But if you do it too quickly, you're going to have reduced energy, you're going to have reduced strength and power outputs, reduced speed outputs, reduced concentration, and reduced muscle mass. If your sole focus is building muscle mass, then you're likely to get slower, start moving like a brick, get less repeatability, less endurance, and a harder perception of any efforts that you put in. So you should always look to improve your performance metrics on a whole with slight biases towards your more specific needs. As a byproduct of being performance focused, everything else will move in the right direction. And the same goes for nutrition. Gone are the days of having a rough idea of your macros and your calorie intake. If you're serious, you need to be really hot on exactly what you're putting into your body and at what times. For gym and training performance, I'd recommend about a 50-gram dose of fast-acting carbohydrates about 60 to 90 minutes before your session. People used to think that having a big porridgey breakfast and a pasta lunch the day of a game was enough, but it's not. What's far more important is what you eat the day before. So I'm going to introduce you to the concept of carb loading. If your daily intake of carbs is about 3 to 5 grams per kilogram of body weight, on a Friday before a game, you need to be taking in 6 to 8. It stores in your muscles so that you've got immediate availability of it during the game, and you can use muscle glycogen for longer before dipping into other energy stores. Protein timings don't matter quite so much as long as you're hitting your 2 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight target per day. To be safe though, so you get a nice even spread throughout the day, I'd aim for 40 to 50 grams with each meal, breakfast, lunch and dinner, and top the rest up with snacks. Fats play a really important role in energy and hormone function, so 0.8 to 1 gram of fats per day, depending on what your body composition needs are. And an absolute non-negotiable, fibre. 40 grams per day. Most of it will come from your fruits and your veggies, but things like chia seeds are also a really good source. Not only is it responsible for your daily movements, shall we say, but it's also responsible for a thing called nutrient partitioning. Put simply, it means it makes sure all the nutrients are getting to the right places. It keeps your metabolism healthy, and it makes it easier for you to manage your weight. So this episode has been primarily about the predicament that most rugby players face. Should I gain weight? Should I lose weight? Should I stay the same? How do I do it? We've started touching on the how-to in this episode, and we'll go into a lot more depth in the further episodes. But for now, here's a decision-making tree that will help you decide exactly which path you need to take. I'm going to make it full screen, so screenshot it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. In the next episode, we're going to go into a lot more depth around this decision-making tree and whether or not you should bulk, cut, or maintain for your own performance as a rugby player. Thanks for sticking with me. You can find me on Instagram somewhere around here. This is my first time doing this, so if you could like, share, subscribe, and do everything else that all the other YouTubers ask you to do, that would be awesome.